In a rebellion like this, banditry like this, you must use both the kinetic and the non-kinetic approach.
At a point in the 9th Senate, the Senate was characterized by 1 minute silence, 1 minute silence.
And you will also have to use what we call the carrot and stick approach. Not too long ago, when the new Army chief resumed, it wasn't in the news, but quite a number of these bandits were neutralized. If you have captured the point I was making earlier, there are some sponsors of this thing who are feeding and profiteering from what illegal miners are doing within that. Why is it that there is no boundary in places that there is no mining? So when you take that approach of saying clear them, you will continue to clear, they will continue to come back. If clearing solves solutions, then the one in Republic of Congo should have been resolved. Because there they even had international, peacekeepers. But still it didn't work. So the approach here, and you know where your question was heading to when my governor said, oh, wait there. That is carrot and stick. It's an approach. We are thinking, I'm part of the leadership that we are discussing on how to approach this thing. And what we decided we try to do, it works. But unfortunately, as we are discussing and the army are clearing, those interests, those persons of interest that I'm talking about are well connected and work in connivance with some undesirable elements within the armed forces, undermining the forces. So, my brother, it's a two-way approach.
Of all those who have died due to banditry in Shidoro, Rafi, Muja, local governments, and other parts of Niger states and Nigeria, rest in perfect peace.
This Senate has passed several resolutions, set up ad hoc committee on security, held national security summits, and declared every effort, every support at bringing an end to the persistent insecurity in our nation. We have appropriated budget and also advances numerous steps to support our nation's security agencies, yet insecurity has continued to elude the nation. Further note that negative effects of atrocities committed by these heartless monsters in the period under review include, among others, total collapse of local economies of the affected victims, total collapse of educational system in the affected areas, famine due to collapse of agricultural activities, displacement, social vices such as drug abuse and thuggery emanating from struggle for survival, trauma arising from serial rapes and inhuman, cruel, and deadly subjugations. Cognizance that since the artisanal and small-scale gold and lithium mining started a decade in Niger State and some adjoining states, these prospects are undermined by criminals who profiteer from the sector at the expense of vulnerable population and have made peace to elude us. Aware that collaboration between politically connected Nigerians, unpatriotic security personnel, Chinese citizens who are mostly illegal aliens, and other foreigners in illegal gold mining drives rural banditry and violent local conflicts in the aforementioned areas and other parts of Nigeria. Furthermore, the activities of these non-state actors has led to not fewer than 48 communities across the 3 local government areas of Shiroro, Brafi, and Munya in the Niger East Senatorial District to have so far fallen under the control of these bandits. With more than 5,800 villagers already displaced. Nigeria having 8 army divisions, and despite the large landmass of Niger State, which is larger than the entire southeast, yet the state and the entire north-central region do not have an army division that will have helped in curbing the menace of the criminals that have continued to kidnap, kill, and execute innocent people in the most barbaric manner, to the extent that the military camps in these areas have been sacked and some security personnel killed by the insurgents in the last few months of renewed attacks. Aware also that many primary schools have been turned to IDP camps in the affected areas following the sacking of these villages from their ancestral homes in Shiroro, Rafi, and Munya local governments areas since the beginning of this act of terror by the bandits. Recall that Madaka Gari, Maikujeri, Magami, Zungeru, Basa, Gusoro, Galadimo, and Kogo, and Oki villages were all attacked with casualties as more than 46 people were killed, which also included 25 gallant soldiers, mobile policemen, and other security personnel. Many civilians were killed recently, many others unaccounted, with over 2,300 displaced, more people displaced. The number of persons said to have been killed by bandits in Niger East and Niger State are over 475 between January 2020 to date. Aware that the federal government have made frantic efforts to curb the menace through various operations to tackle cases of terrorism, banditry, and cattle rustling and kidnapping across Nigeria, but yet the expected return of peace in our land is unattainable. But the assurance given by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, with the appointment of new sets of armed forces and police service chiefs, and the procurement of arsenals and equipment, and also the review of the nation's security architecture, hope is being renewed. Further aware that an estimated 80% of mining in the northwest and north central regions are carried out illegally on an artisanal basis by local and illegal aliens population. There exists an implosion of illegal miners mining and exploiting the large untapped mineral deposits in the area, especially gold, which has strategic importance and economic value. And most recently, the discovery of lithium can be said to be at the root of those heinous community violence. Worried that the continuous security challenges and related attacks by terrorists on towns, villages, and communities in Niger State have meted untold hardship on the people and has subjected the affected areas under serious survival threats. Despite the government's ban of artisanal gold and lithium mining in Niger State and other locations, the ban yielded few results. Illegal mining and its associated conflicts continued regardless, due to the complicity of the state actors and the non-state actors. Aware that illegal mining leads to violent local conflicts in two ways. First, those funding the mining fight over control of the mine fields. These sponsors are protected by some state actors, and they act as if they are above the law. Some of the sponsors of illegal mining in our domains are always undermining the activities of the state, showing the level of political connectedness and state protection they enjoy. Second, those who sponsor illegal mining also fund banditry and cattle rustling in mining communities in order to incite violence among cattle breeders and rearers, hence giving the criminal bandits the support to launch predetermined attacks and acting under conditions determined by the sponsors. Mr. President, concerned that if this menace is not drastically addressed, the attacks will continue, and the danger is that it may escalate further to other communities and will negatively affect the food security initiative and economic diversification policy of the federal government. Senate resolves: 1. Direct the joint committees on Army, Air Force, Police, and Solid Minerals to investigate the complicities of the security personnel and agencies that were supposed to protect and enforce security in the affected areas, but are harboring and protecting the criminals, with a view to finding the truth or otherwise of such accusations and proper possible actions to avert future reoccurrence. 2. Call on the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chief of Army Staff, and the Inspector General of Police to immediately ensure the deployment of troops and equipment to the affected territories to defend the unarmed populace and bring back security to the affected communities. 3. Direct the Ministry of Solid Minerals Development to suspend all mining licenses and commence review of such permits with a view to registering and creating a database of artificial mineral miners, establishing mineral buying centers and outlets, and registering of small-scale mining operators, as this will go a long way in formalizing artisanal miners' activities and reduce the acts of sponsoring criminality. 4. Urge the Chief of Army Staff and the Inspector General of Police to, as a matter of urgency, direct for the establishment of an Army Infantry Division in the state, a permanent military and police command bases respectively at the axis adjoining Zamfara State, Shiroro, and Rafi local government areas respectively, and to redesign the modus of operandi of the military operations within the affected areas. 4. Direct the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and NEMA to, as a matter of national emergency, provide relief materials and medical support team to the victims immediately. 5. Call on the Senate to observe a minute silence for all the victims of these callous acts of criminality. Thank you, Mr. President.
I will ask that you allow me to make a few comments, having seconded this very important motion. Mr. President, you will recall that on several occasions in this Senate, we have debated on and on this issue of insecurity across the country. And in recent times, Niger State, excuse me, Niger State has received a very serious attention in Nigeria because of threats to lives and property and death occasioned by attacks by hoodlums and bandits. Mr. President, I recall also that in the 9th Senate, the Senate had actually set up an ad hoc committee to review the security architecture of Nigeria with a view to ensuring that we put in place adequate security measures to contain the menace or the myriad of security challenges that face the country. And so coming at this time and allowed by this Senate, by your indulgence, I think, Mr. President, is a welcome development to also remind all of us here that we are still faced with this challenge of insecurity across the country and that lives are continuing to be lost. And so, Mr. President, I think that we need to review all the interventions that have been made by the Senate, both in the 9th Senate and in recent times by this Senate, with a view to bringing out appropriate measures that are proactive enough to contain the insecurity across the country, and especially, as mentioned by my brother here in his motion, Niger State. Mr. President, at a point in the 9th Senate, the Senate was characterized by 1 minute silence, and it became the vogue. And we felt ashamed and felt indicted that we would not be celebrating where measures had been in place to forestall attacks on communities. And so, Mr. President, my prayer in support of this motion, therefore, is that this Senate, this 10th Senate, would devise means through legislative intervention with the cooperation of the executive that will be proactive enough to prevent attacks and killings of our people rather than observing 1 minute silence and then regretting what has happened. Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity.
This is how I want this 10th Senate to go about it. During prayers, I will still make some contributions. Honestly, I'm talking from experience. Yes, minerals. I served as an air officer commanding the Special Operation Command in the entire northwestern states. Initially in 2018, 2019, they were thinking it was these minerals in Zamfara that were causing all these problems that threatened the 2019 elections. Now, we sat down with our colleagues then, we came up with some solutions, which, like I've always said, some of these things are classified. Now, the only thing I want this 10th Senate, after speaking last week, is no matter how many minutes silence, the number of seminars we do, what I just want this Senate, maybe the leadership, to collaborate with Mr. President is, if you check, I don't want to mention names, but you know, where there are potential conflicts are going on now, every country is mobilizing troops. Anywhere there is insecurity, even during our civil war, both sides were mobilizing troops. You've declared here, this Senate, I was not there, that terror is already taking a war against the state of Nigeria. Why are we not mobilizing troops? So I'm just begging Mr. President to talk with the President and Commander-in-Chief. All we need to do is that the regular training of the Nigerian Army in depot in Zaria, the Air Force ground personnel in Kaduna, naval personnel in Port Harcourt, I am repeating, it is not enough. What I want is that if there are timelines, just for the Senate to say, okay, the federal government, just tell us what you want, and let the Ministry of Defense and Inspector General of Police, by next week, let them call what we call establishment order committee meeting. And then we'll go ahead. If we can afford to train additional, maybe have like 2 or 3 additional army depots, but we should be able to guide the presidency that, look, we want you to produce either 100 or 200 soldiers within the next 1 year. Police, 300 within the next 1 year. If we don't have troops on ground, honestly, we will talk till any time. These people are just laughing at us, because you can only hold the ground when you have the personnel. That is why even where conflicts are going on now, despite projection of air power technology, I'm sure you'll be reading in the, you've been watching in the televisions, they are mobilizing ground troops. I know precisely what I've seen this morning. A country is already mobilizing like 400 reservists. I agree we don't have reservists, but we should be able to train at least about 200 soldiers within 1 year. This is the only time we can dominate the entire 6 geopolitical zones. This terror we are talking about, honestly, they are afraid of death. But they use death to terrorize people because they know the strength is not there. And some of the equipment that we need, like the night vision goggles, these are things you can pick even from the shelf, where it will now give your own troops or police advantage in the night, because most of them are active, very active in the night, even if they carry out operations in the daytime. This is where I contribute, sir. During prayers, I will add additional prayer.